15 years old, trapped in the storm. Eddie faced the world, trying to keep warm. Caught in the system, had nowhere to go. D.A. Riley stepped up, but didn't feel the flow. Tried him as an adult, like he was a beast. But Eddie was just baby, still searching for peace. The court didn't listen, judgment was fast. But deep down inside, Eddie knew he'd outlast. Eddie should've got rehabilitated. In a youth center, they underestimated. But he rose from the ashes, turned pain into drive. Changed policies, kept the hope alive. Riley thought he drowned, thought he'd get crushed. But that young heart post never lost that rush. Locked up in a cell, thought he wouldn't survive. But Eddie found the strength to help others thrive. So we spoke up for those who couldn't be heard. Gave a voice to the voiceless, spitting truth with his words. Redefined the prison, made the system rethink. From broken to whole, he showed them their link. Eddie should've got rehabilitated. In a youth center, they underestimated. But he rose from the ashes, turned pain into drive. Changed policies, kept the hope alive. Maybe it's fate, maybe it's a plan. Sent to light the way, like a guiding hand. God's designed to minister the broken souls. Eddie walked the path, made the system whole. From the dark of despair to the light of the truth. Eddie's life story, the wisdom of youth. Changed the laws, brought awareness to the game. Now prison standing tall, never feeling the same. So when you see a kid with a troubled past, remember Eddie's fight, how he rose from the crash. He's more than a case, he's a beacon of light, proving every single day that wrong can turn right. Eddie should've got rehabilitated. In the youth center, they underestimated. But he rose from the ashes, turned pain into drive. Changed policies, kept the hope alive. So here's to Eddie, breaking every chain. From a victim of the system to breaking the rain. Maybe he was fate, a godsend in disguise. Changing prison lives, giving hope to the wise.
Eddie O'Brien, oh what a story to tell. 15 years young, caught in a prison cell. Trapped in the system, ain't that just a shame? For a crime he didn't do, they played him like a game. Pattern so clear, yet nobody sees. Intentional lies blowing in the breeze. Documented truths, but they're buried so deep. Poor kid lost his life while the system's asleep. Free Eddie, free him till it's backward. Guilty on paper, but he never had the hard facts. Let a fool think he won, that's how it goes. Eddie's innocence buried beneath all the woes. The man couldn't keep his own story straight. Taking a kid's future, ain't that real fate? Welcome back, chat got us talking hood-wise. Dark humor and metaphors disguised in the cries. Sir, hypothetically, in a murder case, ain't it funny how a fool runs this rat race? Growth don't happen in the middle of this mess. Step back, breathe, man, just let go of the stress. Free Eddie, free him till it's backward. Guilty on paper, but he never had the hard facts. Let a fool think he won, that's how it goes. Eddie's innocence buried beneath all the woes. See, you gotta let the clowns believe they succeeded. You didn't fold a break, you just got what you needed. Took it to the chin, not the heart, you see. Don't let the chaos take space in your melody. You're built different, like a lesson they missed. Teaching them boundaries, couldn't find them on a list. Drowning in a puddle, they dragged you below. But now you let them flounder, cause they reap what they sow. So here's to Eddie, just as long overdue. Fighting for the truth like we all have to do. Step back from the noise, watch him throw a fit. Free Eddie O'Brien, let's never forget this. Eddie O'Brien, oh what a story to tell. Fighting for his life in this unjust hell. Free him till it's backward. Guilty on paper, but he never had the hard facts. Let a fool think he won, that's how it goes. Eddie's innocence buried beneath all the woes.
If you want to quote or something, or a ship. Oh yeah, man. Everybody, how we doing today? Holding it down, being solid, standing your ground. Another day, free Eddie all day, every day. What we content creators. We do on podcast. Artie Ortiz today. Chapter 6. Man, this is going to be a good chapter. We're going to get into it. We're going to get into it.
Innocence shattered in a world so torn. They said it was fear, reopening the doors, filled with whispers behind closed floors. A white boy convicted made it look fair, but in the shadow of justice, the truth laid bare. Eddie was a name, but just a pawn in the game. Sacrificed and railroaded, nothing felt the same. Oh, just a boy from Somerville. They played with his life as if it was a thrill. Politics and pressure, shadows at play, innocent hearts lost in this twisted ballet. He folded like glass, the DA showboating, just trying to amass. The system wanted justice, but justice was blind, changing the laws, leaving truth far behind. Remove the judge who dared to be just. Eddie was demonized in the world's cruel thrust. Size mattered not when politics run deep. From day one he fought, but all they did was sweep. Oh, just a boy from Somerville. They played with his life as if it was a thrill. Politics and pressure, shadows at play, innocent hearts lost in this twisted ballet. And those inside knew the story was wrong. We could have done better, sang the old wrong song. Experts pressure to twist the truth arm in the court of despair. There was no charm. He never stood a chance from the very start. A tragic confession, a broken heart. Watch Eddie's face when the world turned cold. An innocent spirit caught in a tale retold. The system failed him, that much is clear. A boy from Somerville, lost in his fear. Yet in the ashes, his story remains of the justice betrayed and the bitter pains. Through the lens of history, we sing his plight. Remember the boy who stood up to the night. Just a boy from Somerville. They played with his life as if it was a thrill. Politics and pressure, shadows at play, innocent hearts lost in this twisted ballet. So let's tell his story, raise voices, unite. For every Eddie, let's stand up and fight. Just a boy from Somerville, forever will stand in the hearts of the people.
What's up? What's up? What's up? Where is everybody today? What's going on here? A couple people on Twitter, a couple people on YouTube. Where is everybody? What's going on, chat? Good morning, subs. Good morning, everybody who woke up ready for some truth today, some tea, and a little bit of righteous chaos. You know what I'm saying? You know, we back at it, though. We're going to dive into a little bit of Margo Nash's chapter 6, you know, politics and murder. And today, family, man, we reach chapter 6. What a perfect number for friggin' Artie Ortiz. And listen, I'll say it again. He should be blocked, but if anyone sees Artie in the chat, get his ass out of here. You know, block him, ban him. I don't care what you do with him. But we're back at it, you know, diving into, you know, Margo's Nash. Great, great book. You know, when we're done with this, we'll be introducing book number 2. It should be coming out. You know, it's already, the manuscript's written. It's definitely going to be interesting. Can't wait for that book to hit the bookstores, man. So reserve your copy now if you can. You know, and I recommend everybody go to your local bookstore, buy a copy of Margo's book. You could go to Amazon, but I was made it aware that, you know, people that sell books, Amazon gets like 40%, you know. So, yeah, go to a bookstore and, you know, or reach out to the author and see the best way to order their book, you know. But yeah, we've been warming up the wings for 30 years, man. Who's been popping up in this case like a bad Wi-Fi signal? Artie Ortiz. What do you know? But at this point, Artie's been around this investigation so long, I'm convinced he's got seniority or some shit. You know, he's been snooping around longer than some people's been paying taxes. No pun. You know, but if there was a loyalty card for showing up where you don't belong, Artie would have earned free coffee. Am I lying? No free coffee over here, but, you know, he'll get a free coffee. He'll get a tote bag, you know, and probably a jacket by now. Do you need a shirt, Artie? Free Eddie? You know, should we get Artie a Free Eddie shirt? I got my Free Eddie shirt on, which the green screen might be throwing off the little shamrock there. But maybe, you know what? I might actually make a Free Eddie jacket. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll get a varsity jacket online and I'll make the Free Eddie on. Yo, that'll be hot, you know? But man, Artie be peeking around corners like, y'all talking about me? He's like Oscar the Grouch that pops up in the friggin' garbage can on Sesame Street. Yes, sir, we are Mr. Ortiz, because you blocked from this place, you know? But you could go get an anonymous account, but then we could tell because your spelling is horrific. So we know when you in the chat. Because you keep showing up like the uninvited cousin at the cookout who swears, I was just in the neighborhood, cousin. Let me get one of them ribs. Remember like Pookie? In Chris Rock in where is it? I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker. Who remembers that movie? You show your age if you say. Shout out to Outlaw Talkers with the $5. Thank you, Mikey. Salute, appreciate you in the chat. But at this point, Artie is not a witness, and he's a recurring character. This guy's been around like, my goodness, we know more lies that Artie, yes, New Jack, actually before New Jack City. Look it up. I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker with Chris Rock in it. And he says, how much for one wing? I got like 35 cents. You know, he plays a little crackhead. The movie came out a couple years before New Jack City. Check it out, though. I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker. It was put out by Keenan Ivory Wayans, you know, the Wayne brothers. You know, but I think we could basically come up with like a where's Artie of this case. You know, you flip a page, boom, there he is. What do you know? You open a YouTube chat room, boom, there he is. Typing like he's on salary or some shit. came busting in the chat the other day. I was like, whoa, where'd this guy come from? Get him up out of here. And we appreciate y'all too. I couldn't even say that. Big shout out to Denise Noah 43, great mod. She should be coming back stateside soon. We'll see. But today we're breaking it all down. Chapter 6 is like where Margo Nash really starts peeling back the layers on why Artie Ortiz's name keeps floating around this case like a balloon that refuses to deflate. And before we get into it, man, let me say this from the heart. Thank you, Margo Nash, man, for allowing me to read the book to this audience, man. I really appreciate it. Your work is giving people clarity, they never really had about this case, man. And thank you to the O'Brien family for trusting me, for letting me continue to speak on Eddie's story, his truth, and the injustice that he lived through for nearly 3 decades. Now listen, buckle up, chat, because chapter 6, I think, is about to be a ride. Grab your coffee, grab your notes, grab your patience, whatever else you got to grab. Get up, we're going to play a song or two. He's all over Reddit. Oh, absolutely. I seen some of the, he's all over Reddit, Facebook, YouTube, Craigslist, Backpage, all of them. You name one. Artie Ortiz, man, this guy, the inconsistencies of this guy over the last 30 years. So gather around, because we're going to dive into this book. And then maybe when it's over, we're going to also go into the inconsistencies of Artie Ortiz. It's going to be like an Artie Ortiz Friday. You know what I mean? So without further ado, we're going to play a quick jam, and then we're going to get into, we're going to get into the Margo Nash book, Politics and Schmurder. YouTube, I have a problem writing the title of Margo Nash's book. YouTube will not let me put a clear title out there because of the words in it, which is kind of crazy. So they will not push the content, So if we want people to see these episodes of this Margo Nash book, and that's why, if you notice it, the way I've been writing the names of the titles, like Margo Nash, Chapter 6, Artie Ortiz, and because I can't really put the name of Margo Nash's book in the title because of the word schmurder. YouTube don't really like that word too much. They're getting their feelings. But yeah, so we're going to go over Chapter 6, Artie Ortiz, 30 years. This guy's been around. I don't go nowhere, man, because when we're done, I'm going to break down the inconsistencies of this dude. You know what I mean? And again, he should be blocked, but if he sneaks into the chat, snipers, you already know what to do. Crack him one. Not literally, Artie. Calm down. But crack this guy one. Get him up out of here, because he is not welcome in this chat. Right, people? We'll be right back with Chapter 6, Margo Nash.
Let me tell you about a kid, only 15 years. Eddie O'Brien, caught in the gears. Political pawns, they played their game. Power and money all in his name. But was tight with wealth, no simple fake. Climbed the ladder, sealed Eddie's state. Wayne but a prosecutor with a purpose. In the court of politics, none could touch us. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was the stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. man since youth. Built a law firm, they spun the truth. When Riley took the case, he was never alone. Built on foundations, powerfully grown. With the Budwell network, they made a show. Charlie Baker in the mix, he's part of the flow. All linked together, climbing the heights. On Eddie's back, they rose to new sights. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was a stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Kimberly Budd, her name now in lights. Chief Justice of the court in the highest of fights. Calls Riley godfather, mentor, uncle too. Let that sink in deep. Eddie's pain paved through. Judge Heffernan ruled fair, you played your part. But the pressure came down like a storm in the dark. It wasn't about truth, wasn't about rights. It was all about power and their political heights. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was the stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Eddie got used by a system so cruel. A pawn on the chessboard, they played him as a fool. So remember his name, let it echo, let it be free. Eddie till it's backwards. Fight for the right you see. Can we keep it real honest? Let the truth ignite. We don't bend, we don't break. We will stand for the light.
Oh yeah, let's go. Let's get into it. Appreciate everybody, for joining us. We back with chapter 6, Free Eddie all day, every day, until it's backwards. Some people still don't know what that means. They're like, what does that mean? But what does Free Eddie backwards mean? Eddie's free, right? End the story. But the arrival time, that timed itself, can't agree with, man. Some days Artie says he got there at 9:45. Other days it's earlier. Sometimes he's there before the damn police. I mean, all right, we already been thinking that. I mean, sometimes after, he's basically teleported. So let's see what Margo Nash had to say about Mr. Artie Ortiz. Artie, can you hear me? I know you can't chat because you blocked. And if he isn't blocked, when you see him, get his ass out of here. Because he just goes too much disrespect for the O'Briens. Shout out to the O'Briens, man. Ed O'Brien. I can't call him Mr. O'Brien, He gets upset at that. But some days, let's get into this. Artie Ortiz was the husband of Carol Ortiz, Janet Downing's younger sister. In March of 1994, the Ortizes and the toddler's AJ moved into the Downing home. Downing and her children reported to many friends and neighbors that the couple fought constantly. And that it wasn't a pleasant living environment. Although the arrangement was supposed to be temporary, it lasted almost a year. When Downing learned that Ortiz was dealing drugs out of the basement of her house, she demanded that they leave. She told Gina Mahoney that Ortiz kept the drugs in a small refrigerator in the basement. Did Janet find Artie's stash? That's something that we have to wonder. Did she find Artie's stash? Mixed in the damn kitty litter. Good question. 1 second, people. Just got to fix something real quick. Did she find his stash? Okay, let's get Ryan Downing, in one interview with the police, reported that several weeks before the murder, he came home from school and saw the outside basement door wide open. Had Ortiz continued dealing drugs? Mahoney said that Ortiz was at the Downing home often while Downing was at work and the children were in school. Downing said he had keys to the house that he refused to return to her. Janet Downing told 3 different people, her best friend, Jean McGarry, Gina Mahoney, and her co-worker, Mary Rivera, about the green cab taxis surrounding her on Summer Street, about things being moved around in her house and clothes appearing in Erin's closet that weren't Erin's, about Christmas ornaments being found around the house, about her book disappearing from her nightstand and being returned to her in a parking lot by Ortiz several weeks later. That was some freaky shit right there. You know, the book's missing from her bedroom, and this guy says, "Oh, I found this in a parking lot." Like, what's the odds? That guy is a creep. You know, windshield washer fluid being poured on her car seats, and all of these events had occurred since Ortiz moved out in March. Man, because he's mad. He's salty. Not once did Downing mention to any of these people that she suspected Eddie O'Brien of these things. She told Mahoney that she suspected Ortiz. And no wonder the police didn't want to talk to Gina, right? They didn't want to talk to Gina. They didn't want to talk to Great Time for a Break. Welcome back, Sherry. How you been? You know, they don't want to talk to Gina. They didn't want to talk to Virginia. You know, they didn't want to talk to anybody. And if there are super chats, I'll read them when I catch up. And I'll try to catch up with the chat since, you know, I'm not Superman. I can't multitask. I'm not your boy. But not once did she mention any of these people that she suspected Eddie O'Brien of these things. She suspected Ortiz. Reporter Marguerite Egan wrote in the Boston Herald that Jean McGarry, Janet Downing's closest friend, says that Downing was upset, unnerved by the odd appearances and disappearances in her home, the bag of strange clothes that materialized out of nowhere, her daughter Erin's house key missing since Christmas, but never ever did Downing tell McGarry of any suspected connection to Eddie O'Brien. Every witness interview is required to be documented in a police report. That is standard police procedure. There was no police report filed of the interviews with Jean McGarry and Artie Ortiz. Why? Was something discovered that was harmful to the Commonwealth's case? Why was Artie not? Where was his interview at? The theory District Attorney Tom Riley would present depended on jurors believing that Eddie O'Brien, secretly obsessed with Janet Downing, was one sneaking in and out of the Downing home. In both juvenile court transfer hearings that were held, Riley suggested through well-prepared witnesses, Paul and Ryan Downing, that Eddie O'Brien might have been breaking into the Downing house and moving things around, making Eddie appear predatory and obsessed, and providing a motive for the killings. Although Riley didn't have to prove motive, it's very difficult to convict someone of first degree with no motive is apparent. All Riley needed to do was suggest that it could have been Eddie. Police refused over and over to interview Gina Mahoney. Why would they not interview Gina Mahoney? Let me know in the chat. Let me know what you think. Why the police would not interview Gina. I want the chat to play along with me today. Come on. You know, then I'll put the camera back on. They seemed intent on avoiding having any reports containing contradictory evidence in the official investigation file. Statements of a witness like Jean McGarry, who would not have agreed with the Commonwealth's theory, could have been ignored in a different way. If the interviews were documented in writing, the defense would not have access to the information. The Brady rule requires prosecutors to disclose to the defense any material exculpatory evidence the government possesses. Brady material or evidence the prosecutor is required to disclose under this rule includes any evidence favorable to the accused, evidence that goes towards negating a defendant's guilt that would reduce the defendant's potential sentence or that goes to a witness's credibility. The only way to get around the Brady rule is to not have the information in your possession. If there's no written report, there's no possession. Even though standard police procedure, especially in a murder investigation, requires that all interviews be documented in a formal report. And if you want me to break down the Brady rule for you, let me know and I will explain it where the chat can understand it, because I know there's a lot of shit gets complicated, and I try to break it down. So if you want me to break down the Brady rule later, let me know. Let me just find, let's see. She have ruined Riley's, she would have ruined Riley's narrative. Okay. They didn't want to hear anything that was going against the narrative. Corruption. Absolutely. Very, very good. Didn't want the truth to come out. Absolutely. All very. The only way to get around the Brady rule, or I already did that one. We know Ortiz was interviewed because on Tuesday afternoon, July 25th, 1995, 2 days after the murder, he surprised Mahoney by returning to her house. He told her he's been questioned by the police, and they told him that the investigation was concentrated on little Ed. He showed Mahoney a drawing of a knife that the police made during the questioning. To Mahoney, it appeared to be a common kitchen knife used for chopping vegetables. Ortiz reported that the police asked him if little Ed knew where Downing kept her kitchen knives. Why would he have a drawing on him, after the investigation? And then Ortiz added that he and Downing had talked many times in the past, and Downing had insisted if anything ever happened to her, that she wanted him and Carol to have her car. Of course he did. Her car. His sister-in-law is brutally murdered, and 2 days later, he wants her car? And it didn't stop there. Downing also, Ortiz continued, wanted him and Carol to move into her house, raise her children, and take care of her property. Needless to say, this was hardly credible since he'd been thrown out of the house 3 months before. And how did the police not look into that? How is that not a motive? Oh, we wanted her out the way so we can inherit the property. I mean, that could also be, But I don't know. These Somerville police were just, I don't know. They were morons, I guess. The CPAC unit, we already know what time they're on. Eddie didn't recognize the man who threatened him at the Downing home as Artie Ortiz. However, Ortiz had been able to enlist the help of others in a taxicab incident. It is not inconceivable that he could have done so again, or Eddie could have been mistaken. When interviewed by Dr. Spires in October of 95, Eddie said the basement door was wide open when he ran out. Paul Downing told the police that his mother had been sleeping on the couch when he closed the front door and left the house to go to Revere Beach at 8:30. He claimed that the door locked automatically when closed. Downing would have been alone in the house after Paul left at 8:30. When Eddie arrived at approximately 9:15, the front door was unlocked and ajar. Only the inside door to the house was closed. Someone had opened the front door. Margo Abreu, John Fitzgerald, and Joey Dion, Ryan Downing's friends, knocked at the door at 9:20. They all said the outside front door was open. No one answered the inner door when they knocked. Ryan said he came home and discovered his mom's body at 9:55. He reported that he had to open the front door with a key because it was closed and locked. Someone had to have locked the door between Eddie fleeing the house at 9:20 after the boys knocked and Ryan returned home at 9:55. The police determined that there was no forced entry to the house. The back door was locked. Downing's purse and keys were on a kitchen counter. There was no robbery. What y'all think so far? You know, you look at the timelines. You know, they go to the beach at 8:30. Paul leaves the house at 8:30. Okay, they go to the beach. When Eddie arrived, approximately 9:15, the front door was unlocked. Now, 5 minutes later, right? 9:15, that's when Eddie's in the Downing house. 5 minutes later, at 9:20, Marco Abreu, John Fitzpatrick, Joey Dion, they all knocked at the front door. They all said the outside front door was open. Interesting, right? Because Ryan had to use a key. But they said the front door was open. No one answered the inner door when they knocked. So you're not going to go in and see why your friend's door's open? Ryan said he came home and discovered his mother's body at 9:55. That's 35 minutes after they knocked on the door. He reported that he had to open the front door with a key because it was closed and locked. Someone to have locked the door between Eddie running out the house at 9:20 after the boys knocked and Ryan's return home at 9:55. The police determined that there was no forced entry to the house. Boy, the Artie chapter was very short. Someone had opened the front door between when Paul left his mother's napping on the couch and when Eddie arrived. Someone had been in the basement and opened the basement door to the backyard. Sometime between 8:30 and 9:15, Eddie was at his home across the street during all of that time. Damn, Eddie got a real screw job, didn't he, people? I mean, all the evidence that we've been laying down, the DNA test, the blood, you know, shout out to Joe was good. Shout out to 2 Cent. Shout out to Aunt Jerry. How you doing, man? Holding it down. True crime. Shout out to the wifey over here holding the man down. Sherry, I cringe when I hear the name. Oh, absolutely. That's why he ain't allowed over here. This is one block he can't come down. You know, he ain't allowed on this block. There's plenty of other blocks that he can kind of go chill on. Not over here. Whose taxi cab was parked besides the backyard? Oops, 1 second. 1 second, peoples. Hey, how you doing there, buddy? Hey, who's that guy on the screen? Who's that guy on the screen? Whose taxi cab was parked beside the backyard? Ortiz. Whose taxi was unable to move because it was surrounded by the emergency vehicles that arrived at 9:56? Ortiz. Who said he lost his keys in the backyard of 71 Hamlet Street that night? Artie Ortiz. The keys were reportedly found in the backyard and returned to him. That is crazy right there. Like, how lucky, like, my God, he got a horseshoe up his ass. You lose your keys on a crime scene and you're not even named a suspect. Janet tells her neighbor that she's petrified of you, that you've been dealing drugs, and you're not even a suspect. There's a lot of people that should have been suspects in this case. Paul Downing Sr. for one, another one. We heard, in the chat a couple of days ago that he was very violent with Janet. Why do you think Janet kicked his ass to the curb? Like, you got to go. We heard what happened with Paul Jr. and Janet, like people say he used to, kick his mother's back in, allegedly. You know what I mean? Paul Ryan said, I know what they did. They were hiding. Well, wasn't one of the girls' boyfriends used to hide under the bed? So all these people, you could say, okay, who knows? But you couldn't just count them out. You should have considered them at least for an investigation. The keys were found in the backyard and returned to Artie Ortiz, but there's no mention of the keys in the investigation file that was turned over to the defense. Of course there's not. Mahoney said that for more than 1 year after the murder, Ortiz repeatedly appeared wherever she had to be. She would see him in the cab behind her as she drove. She would see him on Boston Street driving by her house after she came home from work, or at the shopping mall, the grocery store, the post office. One day she went to the O'Brien's home to meet with Eddie's lawyer. They stood at the front window as Mahoney said, okay, we should be right along soon, as they watched Ortiz go by in the cab, slowing down as he looked out the window. I asked her to estimate how many times she found him following her that next year, and Mahoney said at least 200 to 300 times. God damn, you're a creep, buddy.
He's a stalker.
Oh my goodness, 200 to 300 times? That's like half the year if you did it once a day. And more importantly, why aren't the police and district attorney Tom Riley in the least bit interested to hear about any of this? Oh, the next book, I'm sure there's going to be a good part about Artie Ortiz. There was so many inconsistencies, and that basically ended the Artie Ortiz chapter. But we are going to go into chapter 7. But I just want to go over some inconsistencies about this clown. And look, we ain't here to solve a crime, right? That ain't our job. But once we free Eddie, the police can do whatever they want to do. But, our job here is to get a man out of prison that's been wrongfully convicted, over 30 years. 30 years to us might have went by fast. As they say, the days are long, the years are short. Well, it's different in the joint. They even tell people, like, most convicts won't even have a calendar in their cell because the dates don't matter. But some days, man, Artie Ortiz, bro. The only consistent thing about Artie Ortiz, right, is that he never matches the actual timeline. And let's talk about the cat that never existed. Artie swears, that he went in the house to get the cat. And he might have been trying to get in front of a narrative because Margo Nash said that there was kitten here. That was a big inquiry, I believe, was her words. The cat here was a big inquiry, at trial. And maybe when Margo Nash calms down, from her book, we can get her on here and talk to her about it. Yeah, cute story, Artie. Except for one tiny detail, there was no cats. They had a dog. Not one witness, not one report, nowhere. Now, no paw prints or anything, no kitty litter around. No stray hairballs. The only thing feline in this story is Artie's imagination. You know, and now let's talk about the dog that he forgot existed. You know, there was an animal in the house. Yeah, it was a dog. And the way that they explain the story, that the dog went over, kind of lightly grabbed the officer by the hand, you know, bit the officer. But from what I understand, like kind of like Flipper. Hey, buddy, come here. Come over here.
I'm gonna show you something.
You know, the dog led the police to the body. And somehow Artie forgot to mention that. You know, I'd rather lose service, but at least you're on a ship. You know what I mean? You look out there, you see nothing but ocean. You can come back and check out the replay later. Shout out to the great mod Denise No 43. You know, she's on a cruise right now. Are we all jealous? Tell how jealous we are. We jealous.
Come get me, girl.
We want to be on that damn cruise. You know, yep, the poor dog, right? Because the dog was petrified. And that's the other thing. Whoever did this to Janet was able to control that dog because that dog didn't even bark. Absolutely. On Jerry, we jealous.
Come get me.
You know, but Artie forgot to mention that. And remember, a cat that never existed, but forgot that there was, you know, Joshua in the kitchen. I don't know. I can't buy that there was, you know, cats in the house, you know. And then there's a whole, I went into the house saga. This one deserves its own series, you know. Well, I went into the house 4 or 5 hours later, is what Artie said. And then, oh no, I went in the next day. And then, oh no, a cop took me in. Well, yeah, the cop that took you in, of course, he's no longer alive. So there goes that. His fourth version was, I never said any of that. I only said that to test you guys to see how you really roll. All this is facts. We all heard it. Abby Rose, listen. This is all in the book. He's been defending himself for years. He don't know how to be polite. So it is what it is. Your Artie's what, niece or his daughter, right? Or you're some relation to Artie.
Well, we get one.
But Artie knows why he's not wanted over here. He did it to himself. Artie could have been over here, but he wanted to come in here and be disrespectful. So we can't have that. And Artie knows. Artie had a chance to. He said he was, you know what? Artie had his chance. Artie said, Mike, I'll call you behind the scenes and I'll tell you everything. That's a fact. He said that right in one of these chats going back like a month or so ago. And I'm sure people in the chat can, you know, may remember that. He said, I'll call you behind the scenes and tell you everything. And guess what? He never called. So. What about the ineffective assistant of counsel? Why not argue that instead of relitigating the case? Margo is part of the defense, and she said in the first 5 pages in her book that she didn't do her job. Well, I think she said that, was it that she didn't do her job? Or was that no matter what she did? Let me go check. I'm going to go back and check that.
Yeah.
And Margo Nash wasn't an attorney, I don't think. Margo Nash was just like she explained it. She had very little anything to do with the case. George would not really talk to Margo about the case, and we'll go back into them first couple of chapters if we need to. But if I remember correctly, I think Margo said that she was kept from like legal stuff, only George was making decisions for Eddie at that point. But I will go back and look. That's what I thought. Bob George did keep her out of the loop. So I don't think ineffective counsel would really work as far as if you're going for Margo. But but yeah, so Margo Nash said that George was making all the decisions, and that's that, but so this is not the SAT, nobody's testing, when he said, I only said that to test you. And when he ever said that, I'm like, a test, like, come on. This ain't no time to be lying. This is one time that Artie Ortiz could have proved himself that I'm not, but you lie after lie after lie, and nobody can believe you. And you had plenty of times. Tall, I think I know what you're saying, and nobody's saying that. I think I read in here that I think Eddie had mentioned about the hang on. Yeah, I think he said the man that grabbed him. Hang on, let me go back and look. In the chapter before this, I think Eddie says that the man wasn't tall enough to be Artie. But I would have to go back and actually look for that part. The police asked Ed and Eddie to come to the station to be interviewed. Ed was concerned by now that his son was being considered a suspect in the Downing murder, but he was assured that the local and state police were only investigating the mugging. At the station, both Ed and Eddie signed Miranda waivers and cooperated fully. They had nothing to hide. Eddie hadn't done anything wrong. Eddie hadn't yet told his parents what he seen that night and didn't tell them until 2 weeks after his arrest. He was still fearful of jeopardizing his family's safety. He was sure the police would figure out he didn't kill Downing and would release him. Eddie was photographed at the Somerville Police Department that night. He still had on the same clothes he had on all day. The photos showed that there was no visible blood on him. His shirt had a faint, watery blood smear consistent with the hand wound. All these items were later tested by the police. He did have visible scratches over his arms and legs. Janet Downer had been stabbed approximately 98 times. Some 66 of these wounds were deep stab wounds, some 4 to 5 inches deep of her chest, torso, back, neck, skull, ears, legs, and arms. The rest were slash wounds on her neck and body. Some were long, superficial cuts inflicted deliberately while she was unconscious or dead. Blood was everywhere at the scene. It was visible on the first 5 stairs and the walls of the stairway that led up to the bedrooms. It was on the hallway walls, on the doors, on the woodwork, in the dining room, and in the kitchen. There was a huge puddle of blood on the dining room floor.
I got me back.
Where Downing laid, blood drops were all over the hallway floor, the kitchen floor. Blood was smeared all the way down both sides of the cellar stairway walls. There was blood all over the cellar door, the iron latch leading to the backyard. You don't need to be a forensic expert to understand that it would have been impossible for Eddie to commit this homicide, a homicide that included a struggle going 3 rooms and a flight of stairs not to get a single drop of blood on his white shirt, green shorts, or black sneakers. And yet the police charged Eddie O'Brien with murder on the night of July 25th. The fact that the police found no blood on his clothes and the creases of his hands, under his fingernails, or on his size 15 sneakers was just an inconvenient truth. The fact that he had no motive to harm his best friend's mother was of no conscience. The DA would fill in those blanks later. Why this rush to arrest? Why not a more thorough investigation first? After all, Eddie wasn't a flight risk. He was about to enter his sophomore year in high school. His family was entrenched in the community. There was no need to arrest him less than 48 hours after the murder, before any real investigation had begun. This was no longer a search for the truth. It was a search for evidence that would convict Eddie O'Brien. Yep, they definitely did rush the investigation. Absolutely. You know, listen, no one over here is fingering anybody for doing it. You know, no one over here is saying that it was, AO, who it was. Nobody knows who it was. And I don't think anyone over here is trying to figure out who it was. You know, we just think that it's time for Eddie to be free. You know, they screwed him over at the juvenile transfer hearing. Unbelievable. They didn't question the family. Didn't Artie Ortiz say that he talked to Ryan while Ryan was in the police car? Yeah, absolutely. And did I not break down the DNA and show that Eddie O'Brien's DNA was not in the house? Eddie O'Brien's DNA, there was someone else's DNA that was there, but nobody cares. Like, you don't want to know, Ryan, Paul, all you guys, and I know you listen to this because I know you stalk around my Facebook page because your friend request comes up like that. And IP numbers are pretty, that's a nice way to track shit down too. We just got suspicions of certain people, which everyone is entitled to. But as I go on, all the lies, they only tested Eddie's DNA. Absolutely. All the lies that went on over in JFK's chat, with Artie Ortiz, and what's one version that doesn't sound like improv night? Every time he opened his mouth, it was another lie. And are we supposed to believe Artie Ortiz? We're coming up on the hour mark. Give me a minute. I'll be right back. Give me about 3 minutes. All right, let's go. Go to truthabouteddieobrien.com. Go to the help button. Make them donations, man. Help them out.
Let me tell you about a kid, only 15 years. Eddie O'Brien, caught in the gears. Political pawns, they played their game. Power and money all in his name. But was tight with will, no simple fate. Climbed the ladder, sealed Eddie's state. Wayne, but a prosecutor with a purpose. In the court of politics, none could touch us. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was the stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Riley and Bud, best friends since youth. Built a law firm, they spun the truth. When Riley took the case, he was never alone. Built on foundations, powerfully grown. With the Budwell network, they made a show. Charlie Baker in the mix, he's part of the flow. All linked together, climbing the heights. On Eddie's back, they rose to new sights. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was a stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Kimberly Budd, her name now in lights. Chief Justice of the Court in the highest of fights. Calls Riley Godfather, mentor, uncle too. Let that sink in deep. Eddie's pain paved through. Judge Heffernan ruled fair, you played your part, but the pressure came down like a storm in the dark. It wasn't about truth, wasn't about rights. It was all about power and their political heights. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was the stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Eddie got used by a system so cruel. A pawn on the chessboard, they played him as a fool. So remember his name, let it echo, let it be free. Eddie till it's backwards. Fight for the right, you see. Can we keep it real, Thomas? Let the truth ignite. We don't bend, we don't break. We will stand for the light. Yeah. Let me.
Oh, shout out to the one and only, man. Freebird in the house, man. Shout out to Freebird for the 20 spot. Thank you very much. Holding it down.
In the courtroom lights, truth's gonna bend.
We're gonna break down the
Heffernan standing
notes
tall,
coming up real soon.
trying to defend. Said it looked bad on paper, but it's all deeper. Politics lurking, call it a grim reaper. Eddie was just a kid, caught in the fray, but the power players had a game to play. From day one, they wanted him to fall. A kid in the spotlight, crushed by it all. Heffernan knew the truth. No, it ain't fair. Politics behind the scenes, no one would care. Guilty or innocent, the verdict was set. Justice wasn't blind, it was a political bet. Dr. Bonham was chosen, thought he would be right. A face of fairness in that long, dark night. But the DA smiled wide, played both sides slick. Heffernan thought neutral, but maybe that's the trick. Eddie's fate sealed with a stroke of a pen. My ruling was sound, but the world turned again. They needed him guilty to fit their plan, change the laws mid-game. Oh, what a scam! Heffernan knew the truth. No, it ain't fair. Politics behind the scenes, no one would care. Guilty or innocent, the verdict was set. Justice wasn't blind, it was a political bet. Juvenile court, he should have stayed there. 20 years, not a slap, but no one would care. System in panic cause he stood his ground, but the wheels of justice just turned him around. They wanted Eddie down, they wanted him lost. With the stakes so high, he paid the cost. Heffernan's truth rang clear in the dark. tried to bring light, but it missed the mark. Eddie, a kid caught in a game, lost in the shuffle, society's shame. So here's a lesson carved deep as stone: justice shouldn't wear a political tone. Heffernan stood firm, knew it wasn't just in a world focused on power. Who can you trust? Heffernan knew the truth. No, it ain't fair. Politics behind the scenes, no one would care. Guilty or innocent, the verdict was set. Justice wasn't blind, it was a political bet. So let's remember as the story unfolds, the tales of the innocent, the truth yet told. Heffernan knew the truth, and it cuts like a knife in the courtroom of power. What's the cost of a life?
Oh, yeah. What's the cost of a life? Because Heffernan knew. And we talked about that a couple, maybe last week, that he said once he made that ruling, Eddie's fate was sealed. And he knew that. Which was crazy. It's just a shame. But we're getting into the inconsistencies, of Artie Ortiz. And I guess he's upset because he can't defend himself. He had 30 years to defend himself, But yeah, so we all heard the excuses, I went in the house 4 or 5 hours later. I went in the house the next day. A cop took me in. I never said that. I only said that to test you, and shout out to Kevy Kev over there and JFK, for pulling this stuff out of Artie, but nobody is testing this guy's critical skills. I mean, one version that doesn't sound like it's repeating itself over and over. And how about the blood trail that appears and disappears like a magic trick at times? Artie claims that he was 30 foot? There was like a 30 foot behind his taxi cab. So there's lines over there. Appreciate Freebird for the $5. Thank you very much. There's lines over there on a sidewalk going up Hamlet Street, and I think they're all about they're probably 4 foot lines, So he said he was 15 feet, so maybe three sidewalk squares up, and then another 30 feet, the blood trail behind the cab. Then he says he didn't see it because it was dark, right? But then I don't know if it was Brill or Kev that said, well, if he pulled up after the fact and the blood trail was there, wouldn't he ran it over with his cab? Oh, that's a great point. So the blood trail had to be there after the cab was already there. But then he says he did see it when he was looking for his keys. Then he says, I never said that. So at that point, the blood trail has more cameos than Artie does. And then we can get to the dispatcher call that never existed. Boy, Artie, man, the lies just kept getting deeper. Artie said that the dispatch called him and said, call your wife, something happened to Janet, right? Except no dispatcher has ever been identified, right? No record of the call ever existed. Nobody knew anything happened to Janet at that time. Riley never investigated by going to the taxi cab. Nah, because they didn't give a shit. They had Eddie. And that's what they wanted, because that met their super predator guidelines. Nobody knew anything what happened to Janet at that time. So, who called you, Artie? The ghost of plot holes past? Like, who called you? I mean, the emotional performance of a lifetime. Artie cries, then Ian cries, then he cries again. I mean, shit. He says he only cried to test people. Really? That's why you were crying, Artie, to test people? I mean, your emotions got more settings than a ring light. You got it on neutral, you got it on warm, it's cool, you're lying, you're not lying, you're testing, you're not testing. You know, you're a wolf, bro. You're a hyena. You know, you can't even be, you're a hyena. You know, just something that just can't be trusted. You know what I mean? No matter what. I mean, for 30 years, Artie Ortiz has been the human glitch in this case, right? Every time he speaks, this shit changes. Every time Artie explains, the explanation contradicts the last one. Every time he tries to clear shit up, the fog gets thicker. And yet, this guy's name keeps popping up. His story keeps shifting. His presence keeps lingering. You know, and there's an interview with him, you know, over on JFK Show. Go over there and check it out. You know what I mean? A lot of interviews over there, you know, but Artie's interview, and then he keeps showing up and just saying stupid shit. Lie after lie after lie after lie. So today, we ain't here to accuse anybody. We're just not pointing fingers. We're not solving the case. All I'm saying is everything that Artie Ortiz has already said. Everything you heard me say today was things that Artie Ortiz had left in the chat. And many of you were in them same chats. And you know what was said. And his name just kept popping up. His story just keeps shifting. He's there, he's there, he's there. You know, so if the truth was a straight line, Artie drew a pretzel. You know, because ain't nothing about the truth with Artie Ortiz. You know, and that's why we're here, right? To break down all these inconsistencies, expose these contradictions, and keep it real. Because somebody has to, because there's been a man in a cell smaller than most of y'all bathrooms for 30 years. Imagine that. Think about it. In your bathroom, there's a bed. There's a desk probably 2 feet wide by like 3 feet long. A metal chair attached to it. You might have a locker, pull-out locker. Depending if you're in the old style, like when I was in Max in Rhode Island, you know, it was like the old castle, old brick thing. You know, the toilet was porcelain. The sink was porcelain. You know what I'm saying? You know, matter of fact, I got a picture of my old cell block up here. Zena, come here, baby. Hang on, people. Hi. What are you doing? You gonna say hi? Say hi. Say hi, everybody. Say I'm Xena, the warrior princess. Who's that? Is that you? You on that screen too? You on that screen? You on this screen? How many screens you on? You on like 4 TVs in here. You on the big screen over there. Look at you on the TV. Oh my goodness. Look at my baby. Yeah. Who's that? Say free Eddie. All right. You're getting all cheesy over here, kid. Love you. You got too much cheese on you.
You can eat it.
Love you.
Okay, love you, Papa.
My granddaughter. You know, she loves to come in and be on the podcast, be on the show. She wants to be part of the spotlight. You know, that's right. Xena, the warrior princess. You know, I asked my daughter, where'd you come up with that name? She said, I let the father name it.
X-E-N-A.
You know, and he named her after Xena, the warrior princess, you know, so absolutely. Hey, chat, happy Friday. welcome. Yeah, what a sweetie. She's a beautiful baby. She is an adult, but she is still my baby. Absolutely. You know, I have 8 grandchildren. Imagine that, 8. People are like, what? You got 8 grandchildren?
We're gonna do a baseball team.
Just like the O'Briens do. We might be able to have play baseball, have grandkids versus grandkids. We almost have enough for 2 complete teams. If you get the O'Brien's grandchildren, we'll get my grandchildren. We can have a big baseball game. How about that? But let's get back into Artie Ortiz. And that's why we're here, to break down the inconsistencies, this guy's contradictions. And like I said, all this shit is just stuff that Artie has talked about. That Artie has exposed himself, as being a snake. Because Artie has lied more times. But we're laying out 30 years of this guy. We have Patricia Weiss says, we have number 8 on the way in August. It is the best. Absolutely. The best thing about, having kids is being a grandparent.
Aunt Sherry,
Denise, 9 grandchildren and 2 greats. They're all grateful to be. Oh, boy, 9 grandchildren. You got me beat by 1.
We're going to have a big date, play dates.
Greats to me. Absolutely, great kids, they have a tough world to grow up in, but we'll do the best we can. But laying down the 30 years of Artie Ortiz, the Artie Ortiz contradictions. If we go back and look at these timelines, man, 1995, the night of the crime, what was his contradictions, What time did you get there? He had 3 different versions. 9:45 p.m. he said one time. Then version B, I got there earlier. And then I was there before the police were there. And then I was there after the police. Everybody remembers, Artie's arrival time changes more often than gas prices. How about the cat that never existed? Another contradiction by Artie Ortiz. I went in to get the cat. What cat? Artie claims he entered the house to rescue a cat in a litter box. But there was no cat. Not then, not ever. Right? There was no cat. Artie remembers this imaginary cat perfectly. And then the dog, he forgets. Right? What dog? There was an animal in the house. It was a dog. He grabbed the officer by the hand, Artie, and led him to the body. Artie's memory? Nope, I don't remember a dog. Of course you don't. But you remember an invisible cat. But you don't remember a real dog. Right? And then let's go 95 to 96. The I went in the house saga with Artie Ortiz. When did you go inside the house? I went in 4 or 5 hours later. And what did he say? He said, oh, I only said that to test you.
Absolutely. If you want to know, believe your own story.
There's a version at the top of the screen. When did you go inside the house, Artie? Oh, 4 or 5 hours later. The next day, a cop took me in. I never said that. These are all things that Artie said. Go watch his interviews. Go watch him in the chats. And the blood trail, contradiction number 5. More contradictions by Mr. A.O. That one wrong. Artie Ortiz has more contradictions. But we're looking at the inconsistencies of Artie, and we're breaking down some of the timeline here. There's going to be another one scrolling at the top of the banner. Oh, I got to get rid of one. Hold on. Here's another one of his contradictions. 1995, the blood trail contradiction. Did you see the blood behind your cab? Version A, what? There was a 30-foot blood trail. 30-foot blood trail. Version B, I didn't see it. It was dark. I did see it when I was looking for my keys. You know, so many inconsistencies of Artie Ortiz. Let's go back and catch up with the chat. So all these inconsistencies of this guy. Was he lying then, or is he lying now, or was he always lying? Absolutely. You know, shout out to 2 Cents where if you lie enough, you begin to believe your own lies as truth and just be making shit up for real. Then AO said he lied about the cat stuff on JFK. Yep. You know, he just kept contradicting himself. We don't know what we have more on audio, the inconsistencies of this guy, Artie Ortiz.
mistakes. Time to uncover the truth for justice's sake. No more suppression, let the voices ring. Together we rise. It's a hell of a
I think only Denise can go on a cruise and get the cruise ship to listen to the podcast, man. Shout out to Denise, man. And get your copy of Margo Nash's book.
hold on tight. Ooh, we're dancing for the truth tonight. Oh, break the chains, let the world see your voice is strong. It's time to be free. Justice for Eddie, justice for all. We'll rise together. We'll never fall, 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 fall. More than half a life in a crowded cage, but hope knows no bounds. It's never too late. Hear the rhythm, feel the beat. Justice is coming, can't accept defeat. No more shadows, let the truth shine bright. Eddie O'Brien, ready for the fight. So let's light the way with our hearts ablaze. Dancing for justice, we're entering a new phase. Sign for Eddie, let the world know we're standing together. We're ready to go.
Oh, shout out to Freebird on this one. Oh, yeah, the imaginary dog.
Yeah. In the shadows of a house where the whispers play, the door of the frame holds the secrets of the day. Locked on to Eddie, they whispered his name. Caught in a tempest, a life gone insane. Down in the dark, where the cellar path runs, a set of keys hit the dirt under disappearing suns. A house key, a car key, lost in the rush. But the state swept it up like a hand in the crush. Eddie's freedom cry, can you hear it loud? Breaking through the darkness, piercing the shroud. 30 years in chains, but the truth won't die. Unseal the past, let Eddie rise high. Unseal the notes, expose all the blocks. Rayleigh trapped Eddie in a manufactured box. 30 years of hidden facts buried in the track. It is time to give Eddie O'Brien his freedom back. Unseal the box, break down the lock. Let the truth ring louder than the courthouse clock. 3 decades of silence, a cold prison shell. Refuse to lie, they cast a wicked spell. No remorse in their eyes, they judge from the booth. But Eddie stands tall, anchored in truth. Summer is opening, the science is real. The manufactured box begins to peel. Voices collide as hope takes its stand. With every heartbeat echoes a drowning band. Eddie's freedom cry, can you hear it loud? Breaking through the darkness, piercing the shroud. 30 years in chains, but the truth won't die. Unseal the past, let Eddie rise high. The drums roll thunder through the halls of despair. With strings and brass, they unite in the air. A symphony of chaos reflects in the night. The fight for Eddie grows bigger, takes flight. Beneath boundless skies, the walls start to shake. Each note of resistance, a wave in the wake. A revolution of honesty will cut through the lies. As the world turns its gaze, a new dawn will rise. So gather the voices who waited too long for Eddie O'Brien. We'll sing out strong. His freedom's a fire, lighting up the gloom. As the massive, triumphant chord brings truth to the room.
I'm getting you up there. Hold on, baby. Oh, yeah, there we go. You know, shout out to Freebird, you know, for the hard writing of a lot of the lyrics on that track. You know, definitely representing over there. You know, Zena, here we are. You back up here. Oh, where'd she go? But Zena wants to do a little dance for y'all, so we gotta put a little song out for her. You ready, Zena? There we go, man. It's time to get up on them tables right now. Get up on them tables and dance. Don't break a leg. Be careful. Zena in the house. Let's go.
Exculpatory truths left on the shelf. Margo, Nash, revealing the stealth. Turning pages, the story unfolds. The politics of murder, a truth bold, and in every corner, the whispers of doubt. A system that's rigged, can't we just shout? Behind those bars, he's waited too long. An innocent heart, where does he belong? Oh, Eddie, hold on tight. We're dancing for the truth tonight. Break the chains, let the world see. Your voice is strong, it's time to be free. Justice for Eddie, justice for all. We'll rise together, we'll never fall.
Free Eddie today and every day, man. Them scam rock the chat.
Reevaluate, we're raising the stakes. Time to uncover the truth for justice's sake. No more suppression, let the voices ring. Together we rise, it's a hell of a thing. We'll sign the petition, take back the night. Fighting for Eddie, we'll win this fight. for the truth tonight. Oh, break the chains, let the world see your voice is strong. It's time to be free. Justice for Eddie, justice for all. We'll rise together, we'll never fall. More than half a life in a crowded cage, but hope knows no bounds. It's never too late. Hear the rhythm, feel the beat. Justice is coming, can't accept defeat. No more shadows, let the truth shine bright. Eddie O'Brien, ready for the fight. So let's light the way with our hearts ablaze. Dancing for justice, we're entering a new phase. Sign for Eddie, let the world know we're standing together. We're ready to go. Oh. 15 years old, life in a flash. Eddie O'Brien's dreams turned to ash. Caught in a storm of political lies. Justice was blind, just heard the cries. In 95, when the law turned cold, a tale of the super predator, truth untold. The DA's game, playing with fate, manipulated minds, sealing Eddie's slate. Oh, Eddie, hold on tight. We're dancing for the truth tonight. Break the chains, let the world see. Your voice is strong, it's time to be free. Justice for Eddie, justice for all. We'll rise together, we'll never fall.
Yeah. Them the tree they tried to bury.
Just a boy from Somerville, caught in the storm. Innocence shattered in a world so torn. They said it was fear, reopening the doors, filled with whispers behind closed floors. A white boy convicted made it look fair, but in the shadow of justice, the truth laid bare. Eddie was a name, but just a pawn in the game. Sacrificed and railroaded, nothing felt the same. Oh, just a boy from Somerville. They played with his life as if it was a thrill. Politics and pressure, shadows at play. Innocent hearts lost in this twisted ballet. Barnum was under pressure, he folded like glass. The DA showboating, just trying to amass. The system wanted justice, but justice was blind, changing the laws, leaving truth far behind. Remove the judge who dared to be judged. lost in the world's cruel thrust. Size mattered not when politics run deep. From day one he fought, but all they did was sweep. Oh, just a boy from Somerville, they played with his life as if it was a thrill. Politics and pressure, shadows at play, innocent hearts lost in this twisted ballet. And those inside knew the story was wrong. We could have done better, sang the old wrong song. Experts pressure to twist the truth, arm in the court of despair. There was no charm, he never stood a chance. From the very start, a tragic confession, a broken heart. Watch Eddie's face when the world turned cold. An innocent spirit caught in a tale retold. The system failed him, that much is clear. A boy
I
from
hate to interrupt
Somerville,
such a good song.
lost in his fear, yet in the ashes, his story remains of the justice betrayed and the bitter pains. Through the lens of history, we sing his plight. Remember the boy who stood up to the night. Just a boy from Somerville, they played with his life as if it was a thrill. Politics and pressure, shadows at play, innocent hearts lost in this twisted ballet. So let's tell this story, raise voices, unite. For every Eddie, let's stand up and fight. Just a boy from Somerville, forever will stand in the heart of the people. His truth in our
I think that's a jam. And someone told me that my AI songs are like wasting the water and I'm ruining the environment. I said, buddy, calm down. You know, I don't think they're that bad. But we're going over some of these inconsistencies of Big Bad Artie Ortiz. You know, we went over the blood, like the dispatch call, right? Artie claims, right, what the dispatch call your wife. Something happened to Janet. But in the reality, like I said earlier, there was nothing identified. No dispatcher, no record of the call, and no one knew Janet was deceased already. So, who'd you call, Artie? I know who. Dionne Warwick, right? The Psychic Friends Network. Them 1-900 numbers were getting expensive back then in 96. You know, the emotional oscillation with Artie Ortiz, right? I cried, or did I? Or I didn't cry. I cried to test people. I only cried because I was emotional. I wasn't emotional. I don't know what I am. I'm a man. I'm a he, she. I'm a dolphin. You know, this guy's emotional settings got more modes than a ceiling fan. You know, and when you lay it out, all this shit becomes crystal clear about Artie. For 30 years, Artie Ortiz's story hasn't evolved, right? It mutated. You know, like black mold growing on the inside of the wall. Every time a detail gets questioned, the story shifted. Every time there was a contradiction, shit got exposed. Another lie, a new version appears, right? Every time clarity was needed, confusion showed the hell up. And if the truth was a straight line, like I said, Artie would be a damn pretzel. And that's why we had to break this down, not to accuse anybody, not to speculate, but just to show the audience exactly why this case has been tangled for 30 years in the web of Artie Ortiz. Because when the stories keep changing, when the truth stays buried, Artie Ortiz's name just keeps popping up over and over again. But that's it. Artie's chapter is done. It's a wrap. He gets no more love here. You know what I mean? Chapter 6 is dead and buried. Kabish? So let's jump into chapter 7, right? I figure we got time for another chapter. The changes in juvenile law. Why, thank you. Thank you very much. You know, so we'll get into the changes in juvenile law. You know, maybe I can play my beat in the background. The changes in juvenile law. Shout out to Freebird, man. My AI songs are amazing, like very powerful. They are God inspired and full of truth, so they hit deep. You know how long, Columbia Records and Warner Brothers and all them big movie companies been using AI? Are you kidding? But changes in juvenile law, we're going to get into that right now. But I just had to thank Freebird. Big shout out to mods. And can one of our mods go to the truthabouteddieobrien.com and grab the GoFundMe page to go send whatever it is, go send go. If you can grab that link, put that up in the chat. So if people want to go ahead and help Eddie out, definitely appreciated. Eddie has a long road ahead of him, hopefully not too long, but because we gotta have our freedom party. We gotta have our freedom party, man. So we're gonna get into this, man. When Eddie O'Brien entered the juvenile justice system in July of '95, it had already changed significantly in the prior 4 years. Legislative amendments have been enacted in a flurry of angry and fearful responses to 2 incidents involving 3 particularly horrific homicides, all committed in the city of Boston by juveniles. These were the murders of Kimberly Ray Harbor, Charles Copley, and Corey Grant. Before the Massachusetts juvenile justice system was based on a model that mandated educational, social, clinical, and diagnostic service to kids adjudicated as delinquents. This system replaced the earlier reform school or training school model, which was punitive, physically abusive, and lacking in any meaningful rehabilitation. The new system was based on the premise that kids younger than 17 years old found guilty of crimes should be treated differently than their counterparts were treated in the adult criminal justice system. Adolescence was not able to make wiser, more thoughtful choices. They were impulsive, often unable to consider the consequences of their actions. They were heavily influenced by both their peers and the environment. Before 1991, in order to be tried as an adult, a youth between the age of 14 and 17 had to have been charged with an offense that for an adult would be punishable by incarceration in state prison, as opposed to county jail. And they had to have been previously found delinquent in juvenile court and placed in the custody of the Department of Youth Services. Under those narrow exceptions, these prosecutions could request a hearing to have the adolescent moved to adult court. At the hearing, the judge had to find, by clear and convincing evidence, both the juvenile presented a significant danger to the public and that he was not amendable to rehabilitation through treatment in the juvenile justice system. And we know Eddie didn't fit that bill. We knew that straight up, even during the first hearing. And then they had another hearing. Absolutely. One of those books you just can't put down. Oh, thank you. Shout out to Courtney, keeping it real and giving us the facts on this case. Thank you. You're very, very welcome, man. Free Eddie. Shout out to Free Bird. Shout out to a great mod, Denise holding it down. And we got some great people up in this chat. Patricia White, been around for a minute. Aunt G, another great mod. Let's see who else is here. Shout out to Joseph. True Crime. What I do without her. Let's see who else is here. Oh yeah. I think I see. Oh, shout out to 2 cents worth, man. Yep. Standing on his square, that's for sure. Shout out to him, man. Really appreciate him. What else we got up in here? And he dropped that by within 1999, 2 cents worth. Much love. Love your show, Mikey Free Eddie. Absolutely. Oh, I didn't even see this one. Freebird said, I drove a tour boat in Cancun once. Laugh out loud. The entire boat was drunk. Crazy times. Is that like a duck boat, kind of? Like they have out in Boston? I'm working for the DJ. Yes, Joseph Jojo. We are all family here. Working to Free Eddie. Absolutely, man. Free Eddie all day. But we're getting back into this. This is a great, great book, Margo. Let's go. We're waiting for the second one, right? And that'll be out just in time. So you can order both books, actually. It's streaming at the top. That's where you can actually get Margo's book. But I would go to a bookstore. If you can. Go to a bookstore. Oh, a 3-level boat. No, a 3-level boat. That must have been. And you said everybody was drunk. Oh, my goodness. That must have been crazy. Yep. I also have, Artie's contradictions versus the physical evidence, if we ever need to go over that. Guys are wasteoid. All right, let's get back into this, man. The 2 amendments to the law in 1990 and 91 changed the standards by which adolescents could be tried in adult court. They also reflected the new political agenda regarding violent juveniles emerging in 1990s around the country. Politicians, social scientists, and conservative legislators were clamoring for more punishment and less rehabilitation. The Harbor Amendment. On October 31st, 1990, Kimberly Ray Harbor, a 26-year-old mother, was dragged into Franklin Field in the Dorchester section of Boston by a group of teens. She was beaten, repeatedly raped, stabbed 132 times, and left for dead. God damn. 3 16-year-olds and 2 15-year-olds thought to be gang members were arrested shortly after. 3 adult suspects, a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old, and a 19-year-old were all arrested. The victims and all of the subjects were black. Governor William Weld believed in retribution, not rehabilitation. On December 5th, 1990, long before any of the defendants would go to trial, the Massachusetts legislature amended the juvenile transfer laws. The amendment declared that any adolescent between the age of 14 and 16 charged with murder was presumed to be amendable to rehabilitation in the juvenile justice system. The incoming Republican Governor Weld, who took office just 2 days after the law became effective, enthusiastically supported this new amendment. 1 year after Harbor's murder, Charles Cockney, age 11, and Corey Grant, age 15, were shot and killed while playing in front of Charles' house in Roxbury section of Boston. 2 15-year-olds and 1 16-year-old were arrested almost immediately. Both of the victims and the 3 suspects were all black. Prosecutors announced at the arraignment 2 days later that they would seek to have the youths tried as adults. This case would test the effectiveness of the new Harbor Amendment and getting adolescents into adult court. At the transfer hearing in juvenile court, 2 of the 3 were transferred to adult courts, where they were tried on 2 counts of first degree. A jury found them not guilty of murder, but guilty of possession of a gun. One had his conviction overturned shortly after due to false testimony by the cop, and all charges against him were dismissed. The other, Willie Dunn, was sentenced to not more than 5 years in prison. Ironically, 15-year-old Damien Bino, who actually fired the gun, wasn't transferred to adult court. He waived the trial, admitted to the murders, and was sent to juvenile lockup until his 21st birthday, the max allowed under the juvenile law at the time. Imagine that. That's insane. You know, the replay crew is going to like the Artie Ortiz segment. Go check that out. Now we're going over, Chapter 7, the juvenile transfer law. But that's crazy. The tragic paradox of the case. An adult suspect with motive, opportunity, and behavioral red flags walked away without a thorough interrogation. Absolutely. While a child with no prior record, no motive, and no red flags was swallowed whole by the shocks. Yes, and that child was Eddie O'Brien. And that's why this case is so sad. All the shit that happened. The Weld administration and outraged legislators in response to Bino's sentence passed the Copley Grant Amendment, giving a prosecutor the right to appeal when a judge refuses to transfer an adolescent charged with murder to adult court. That is crazy. And that's why when that bail happened with Eddie, right? Is that how they was able to, get that appeal by a single justice? Like, that's also crazy. It's like when they can't get the law to break, they just bend the law. The amendment also established minimum sentences for youth convicted of murder in juvenile court. 15 years with eligibility for parole for first-degree murder, and 10 years with eligibility for parole for second-degree murder. This meant that juveniles convicted of murder in juvenile court would first serve their sentences in a juvenile facility until age 18, which after they would move over to an adult facility to serve out the rest of their sentence. This became known as split sentencing. These cases and changes in the juvenile law en masse set the stage for an explosion of what can only be described as hysteria around Eddie O'Brien's case. Between 91 and 95, when Eddie entered the juvenile justice system, there was a growing movement in Massachusetts and the United States of people who believed that our inner cities were about to become war zones for juvenile population of super predators. Social scientist James A. Fox, a criminologist, warned of a bloodbath of violence that could soon wash over the land. Politicians from both major parties picked up the cry super predator dread, and it had a racial component. It focused on young, black, African Americans. Boston already had a nationwide reputation for being racist. It is no coincidence that the 3 murders that promoted the knee-jerk response amendments passed by the lawmakers in 1990 and 91 were crimes committed by young inner-city African-American males on young inner-city African-American victims. 2 of the staunchest proponents of super predator laws in Massachusetts, Weld and Thomas Riley, the Middlesex County District Attorney, both were white men. The African-American District Attorney for the inner city, Suffolk County, Ralph Martin. In those counties, the 3 murders had actually taken place, remained silent on the issue. In the early 1990s, Boston was still reeling from the school busing debacle of the 70s, when hundreds of white parents and their children marched in the streets, pelted school buses full of black kids with rocks, and protested the forced busing of African American children into their white neighborhoods. State police troopers were called in and remained on duty in South Boston for the next 3 years. In 1974, we're talking 52 years ago, the federal court took over the administration of the entire city school system. Control who returned to the school committee only in 1988. Imagine from that era are imprinted in the minds of Bostonians. Who could ever forget the 1976 photograph of a white teenager attacking an African American man on City Hall Plaza with a pole holding the American flag? And it shows it right here. The Soiling of Old Glory, Pulitzer Prize, 1977. Wow. But in the case that most shamed Boston racially was that of Charles Stewart. Very bad system. In 1989, Stewart and his pregnant wife Carol were shot after attending a birthing class in the Mission Hill section of Boston, which through racially mixed contained a predominantly African American housing project. Charles Stewart reported that a black man had shot them. He lived, his wife didn't. Hundreds of cops scored the housing projects, as well as Mattapan, Roxbury, and Dorchester, all the black sections of the city. For the 30-year-old, 6-foot-tall black man in a tracksuit that Stewart had described. 2 months later, the police arrested Willie Bennett, age 39. He was vilified in the press. 73 days after Bennett's arrest, Stewart jumped off the Tobin Bridge, and the real story unfolded. Stewart had murdered his wife for the insurance money. Wow. Well, I'm going to have to look up that information right there. Oh my God, this is so much. In any domestic crime, the police always suspect the husband or wife first. Yeah, right. Not on Boston Street. The city of Boston was indignantly tarnished by the way the police and the white population readily accepted Charles Stewart's version of the events. United States Attorney Wayne Budd initiated a federal inquiry into the arrest of Willie Bennett for the Stewart murder to investigate the stop and search tactics used by the Boston police. Budd was an African American Republican who'd been appointed U.S. Attorney by President Ronald Reagan shortly after Carol Stewart's murder. He was also a close friend and former law partner of Thomas Riley. Now we have a song. Remember the song that we played? It describes all of this. The Middlesex County District Attorney, in fact, the two had formed Budd and Riley, a Boston-based law firm, the largest minority-dominated firm in New England. The largest minority-dominated firm in New England. Ralph Martin, who would become the Suffolk County District Attorney, worked there as an intern, then later for Budd at the United States Attorney's Office. Budd put Martin in charge of the federal investigation into the Boston Police Department racism accusations. In 1992, Governor Weld, who had preceded Budd as U.S. Attorney in Mass, appointed Ralph Martin to the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office. Fox Butterfield of the New York Times opined that appointment was a move intended to improve race relations in the city to shake up Boston's entrenched political and law enforcement worlds, adding that the aides to Governor Weld said he had become convinced of the need to appoint a black to the district attorney's post after the Los Angeles riots following the Rodney King police beating. I remember that. I remember Rodney King. He was also heavily influenced by Wayne Butterfield characterized Ralph Martin as a protege of Mr. Bud. Bud would in 1997 become the campaign manager for Tom Riley in his run for Attorney General. July 26th of 1995, Thomas Riley walked into the courtroom in Somerville District Court for Eddie's arraignment and announced that he would be personally trying the Commonwealth's case against Eddie O'Brien. Never before had a sitting Middlesex County District Attorney personally tried a case, and certainly not a jury case. Middlesex is the largest county in New England, over 54 cities and towns. 250 assistant district attorneys try more than 35,000 cases a year in 19 courts. Riley's decision to be the lead attorney in the O'Brien case was seen by political pundits, newspaper reporters alike, as his first public move to position himself for a run for state attorney general. This case would draw national attention, to the entire juvenile reform system and super predator debate that was Weldon Riley's agenda. It affected Martin because he was the DA in Suffolk County, now where the other teen murders had occurred. What many people didn't know in July of 95 was that Weld also had political aspirations, and they were much more immediately. In November of 95, he announced his resignation as governor in order to run for the U.S. Senate against Senator John Kerry. But personally trying the O'Brien case, Tom Riley became the public face of the fight. But new and tougher laws for juvenile offenders, he would become the first prosecutor to use the Copley-Grant Amendment to appeal the initial decision to keep Eddie in juvenile court. He and Weld were both planning runs for new offices. They were united in their fight to change the juvenile system laws. Riley and Weld would both benefit politically from this case. The stakes were very high for both of these guys. Riley had to succeed in sending Eddie to adult court and securing a first-degree murder conviction. The bonus for them both was that Eddie O'Brien was a Caucasian boy. Riley would show the critics that white semi-urban juveniles charged with murder were prosecuted just like their African-American counterparts. Riley was prosecuting one of his own, a white Irish Catholic altar boy. Weld and Riley could not have asked for a better scenario. How dirty, huh? It's evident. Riley, after you see how many people work under this guy, and Riley was the first one to prosecute a case, and a juvenile case at that. Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, definitely. You want to do the same time? And then maybe tomorrow I'll bring some people up to read if they have the book. Any volunteers, anyone that has the book, maybe tomorrow, come on tomorrow. Jojo, come on about noon. Read some chapters out the book. Absolutely. So chat, man, tomorrow noon. Is everybody available? Shout out to JoJo, man. There's one man that I'm sure Eddie's grateful to have a friend on the outside. And I'll tell you what, when Eddie has a chance to see what goes on in these chats, I already know how he's going to feel, because sometimes being locked up, you feel like you're at your worst. And to just know that there's all these people out here that are really rooting for Eddie O'Brien, and to say that they really, love Eddie O'Brien, they just care about him and they want to support him. And I'm sure that makes Eddie feel like fantastic, like gives him something to smile about. How many things has Eddie O'Brien had the chance to smile about in 30 years? But from what I hear, he still comes out of cell every day smiling like there's daisies growing outside his window. The sun's shining. That's what I'm told of Eddie. And every stand-up guy I know says Eddie's stand-up guy. You know what I mean? But let's get into this. Give me a few minutes. We're going to jam away.
Riley planted seeds, watch the chaos unfold. Spitting hit pieces, just hustling for gold.
Oh, yeah. Let's go, everybody. Get up there and dance.
Now listen closely. I got a story to tell.
Shamrocks. Put the shamrocks.
About a world that spun into a living hell. In the mid-90s, truth lost its place, while the system turned its back on the human race. All they cared about was filling up the beds. Didn't matter who they grabbed, just fill up the spread. They took the innocent kids, tossed them aside. Evidence was trash, it was a twisted ride. Bodies in the system, just numbers on a page. The system didn't care about the pain or the rage. Now look around, see the streets in despair. Families breaking apart, chaos in the air. Wonder why the youth are lost in the haze. A puppet show of lives caught in a cruel maze. Stand-up dudes taking the order they kept, left the neighborhood shattered, families wept. Addicts in the alleys, shadows of the past. We're stuck in the cycle, feeling outclassed. Why do the corners look a zombie show? It's by design, we all know it. Don't you know? It didn't happen by accident. It was all planned. The system made it happen. They had the upper hand. In the chaos in the night, there's a deeper truth. A kid named Eddie O'Brien, lost in his youth. 15 years strong, thrown in a ruthless game. A machine built to crush murderers neath the soulless skies. Now look around, see the streets in despair. Families breaking apart, chaos in the air. Wonder why the youth are lost in the haze. A puppet show of lives caught in a cruel maze. But Eddie's not just a name in a fading light. He's a face of a struggle. He'll put up a fight. With the truth in his heart, he'll rise from the ground. Voices in the shadows, together we're found. So listen closely, the story ain't done. We're reclaiming our truth. We're taking back the sun. For every fallen brother, every shattered dream, we'll rise up together, united as a team.
petition is a petition going around right now. It is just a yesterday, you know, we're gonna get that petition up there online. With that.
15 years old, life in a flash. Eddie O'Brien's dreams turned to ash. Caught in a storm of political lies. Justice was blind, just heard the cries in 95. When the law turned cold, the tale of the super predator, truth untold. The DA's game, playing with fate, manipulated minds, sealing Eddie's slate. Oh, Eddie, hold on tight. We're dancing for the truth tonight. Break the chains, let the world see. Your voice is strong, it's time to be free. Justice for Eddie, justice for all. We'll rise together, we'll never fall. Oh, exculpatory truths left on the shelf. Margo, Nash, both revealing the stealth. Turning pages, the story unfolds. The politics of murder, a truth bold. In every corner, the whispers of doubt. A system that's rigged, can't we just shout? Behind those bars, he's waited too long. An innocent heart, where does he belong? Oh, Eddie, hold on tight. Oh, we're dancing for the truth tonight. Break the chains, let the world. Yeah. Let me tell you about a kid, only 15 years. Eddie O'Brien, caught in the gears. Political pawns, they played their game. Power and money all in his name. But was tight with wealth, no simple fate. Climbed the ladder, sealed Eddie's state. Wayne, but a prosecutor with a purpose. In the court of politics, none could touch us. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was the stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Riley and Bud, best friends since youth. Built a law firm, they spun the truth. When Riley took the case, he was never alone. Built on foundations, power fully grown. With the Budwell network, they made a show. Charlie Baker in the mix, he's part of the flow. All linked together, climbing the heights. On Eddie's back, they rose to new sights. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was the stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Kimberly Budd, her name now in lights. Chief Justice of the court in the highest of fights. Calls Riley godfather, mentor, uncle too. Let that sink in deep. Eddie's pain paid through. Judge Heffernan ruled fair. You played your part, but the pressure came down like a storm in the dark. It wasn't about truth, wasn't about rights. It was all about power and their political heights. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was the stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Eddie got used by a system so cruel. A pawn on the chessboard, they played him as a fool. So remember his name, let it echo, let it be free. Eddie till it's backwards. Fight for the right, you see. Can we keep it real timeless? Let the truth ignite. We don't bend, we don't break. We will stand for the light.
All right, I'm back. I had to stretch my legs. Shout out to Honeybee, been a great, been somebody that's always been down with us, from day one. It says, geez, guys, you brought me to tears. I'm not used to this much love. Truthfully, besides working, I've been very down bad. So coming in here, feeling the love and warmth really feels healing. Well, we don't allow no bullshit over here. You know what I'm saying? We only want peace over here for Eddie. So come over here, chill. You've always been, pushing our channel. Shout out to you. Yes, the book is step one. Absolutely, And I love how Mikey inserts his analogies and truth becomes of his life experiences. Absolutely. That's what it's all about, right? A gift from God to be able to do that. I believe we all put here for a reason, and I said, I was praying and I said, I think a couple of weeks ago that, Lord, you put Eddie in there for a reason, and maybe it was to talk to a lot of these, lost souls that are on the other side of the wall. But 30 years, and it's time for Eddie to come home with his mom and dad. He's done the job that you wanted him to, but it's time for Eddie to come home and be with his family, his sisters and his dad and his mother and his Aunt G and all the people in this chat that adore Eddie O'Brien, and I'm sure Eddie knows it to have this much love. It's totally because, being in them rooms, it's so dark and it's so gloomy and it's such a bad, evil place. And sometimes bad stuff just happens. Jojo explains it. He said, you walk by the same guy, 5 times a day. And the one time you don't say hi to him, he thinks you're plotting against him. And this is what sometimes Eddie is up against. You know what I mean? Trying to do what he's supposed to do. Them doors crack, off to the wall library, hitting them books. I know what is. I can almost picture what he's doing. You know what I mean? He's not out there on rec. Something probably go out there, play some cards once in a while. But most of the time, I got to study my case. He wants to come home. 30 years, man. Look at a little boy on the screen. That's the Eddie O'Brien that left us one day in 1996. Big shout out to Courtney. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Keeping it real and giving us the facts on this case. Absolutely. Shout out to Freebird for the 20. Your AI songs are amazing. Very powerful. They are God inspired and full of truth. They hit so deep. Shout out to Aunt G for the $9.99. This chat is family and always will be, even after Eddie's free. Love your show, Mikey. Free Eddie with the $19.99. Shout out to 2 cents, holding it down. And Freebird with the $5. Go. Love you, Mikey. And your amazing wife. Thank you for all you do for Eddie. Free Eddie. And Freebird with the double back. Just getting here. Artie does nothing but lie. He wasn't defending himself. He had every chance to tell the truth. Absolutely, he sure did. He chose not to. Lie. Don't want to hear lies. Complete waste of time. Absolutely. And that's why we went over his chapter. His chapter's done. And shout out to Law Talk. Thank you, Mikey. Appreciate everybody. Artie had his chance. He had his chance over on other channels. Like, I have no interest, no reason to talk to him at all. Absolutely, Eddie knows. Oh, thank you. If Eddie does not want to share that, I would understand, but hopefully knowing that I stand with him would help him to understand why I'm asking. We share the same goal. Eddie knows. So many great people over here. So many great people in the chat. But this right here is one of the most important. When we talk about the hearings, where they block the truth, the transfer hearing, we just read it in the book, one of the most blatant, shameless courtroom screw jobs probably in the history of Massachusetts, but definitely in the Eddie O'Brien case. I mean, you can't exaggerate this. The moment right here is where the system tied Eddie's hands behind his back and said, good luck defending yourself. Real dirty ass scoundrels. The one where Eddie's attorney tried to do something simple, something maybe necessary, test the blood and hair of the people who were actually in Janet Downing's life. Not strangers, not random suspects. No hypothetical boogeyman. I mean, test the hair of Paul Downing Sr., Jr., Ryan, Carrie Ann, and Artie Ortiz, because all of them, I could figure they could all have a motive. Paul Sr., absolutely. Why you think Janet left his ass? Because he was violent. Paul Jr., like father, like son, right? Ryan, not sure. I'm not sure which one used to put their hands and feet on their mama. Was it Carrie Ann that was living in a shelter? So you got to do some pretty rotten shit for your mom to have you in a shelter. And then what'd your brother say? I know what they did. They hid in the house. I just can't get that out of my head, but that's up for the investigators to handle. But they never tested none of that shit. The D already had their samples, right? They were sitting on them. They were locked up untested. But why? Why were they untested? Because the blood found at the crime scene couldn't exclude these people as contributors. That's why they didn't want to test it. You want to keep it real? Let's keep it all the way real. You know what I mean? The blood found at the crime scene, it could not exclude Artie Ortiz. It could not exclude Paul Downing Sr., Paul Downing Jr., Ryan, or Carrie Ann. Some of the blood at the crime scene matched none of Eddie's markers. What does that tell you? For the people in the back, that we gotta scream it out loud? You know what I mean? It's like, hello, you might understand? Some of the blood at the crime scene does not match Eddie's profile. But that don't mean nothing, right? Oh, what does that mean? Everything. It actually means everything. It's like, it means everything, bro. But could match people close to the victim, but nobody wants to be tested. Yes, Riley's notes prove what his intent was, and we have them broken down. Maybe we'll go over them this weekend. Or maybe some of them we could go over. I might have them today. Yes, everybody should have been looked at, especially everybody in that family, because they all had reasons. It is everything, correct? Absolutely. It's everything. You know? And that's why I think Eddie was so convinced. He was like, the blood isn't mine. The DNA, we broke that down. That isn't me. And he's still sitting there 30 years later scratching his head. I don't understand how the court could anything but look at this case. You know, and Eddie's attorney should have did what most lawyers would do, right? You should file a motion, you know, to the DA to give him them samples so he could test them to the unidentified blood. You should have a right, like how you should have a right to a fair trial. Freebird, what does that violate? Explain that to the chat. By not allowing Eddie's lawyer a chance to compel these samples, the ADA objected, right? And the judge, without hesitation, denied the motion. Eddie thought they would do the right thing and find who did it. Eddie had no clue, really was playing games with his life, plotting and planning his demise behind his back. And Eddie still feels that they're going to come knocking on his door any day now and say, hey, you know, we screwed up. You know, it's time for you to go home. 1 second, man. Mm-hmm. Poor guy. That's the old maximum security in Rhode Island cell block right there. Not the old one. It's the one they physically use. And then doors come slamming shut. Oh, you better get your head out the way. They crank him with this big-ass crank. But this was a major violation by not allowing Eddie's attorney. You know, it's like you're not giving us Eddie thought they would do the right thing. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania corruption is very much like that of Mass. What's with these Commonwealth BS? That's why he's a stone cold alcoholic now, because he couldn't live sober with the truth, with all the skeletons in his closet. They're all starting to come out slowly. The true crime just read my mind. Karma is coming for them, and God doesn't like ugly. And I remember when we used to, I used to go to my family's house up Federal Hill, you know, for the weekend and shit. And they used to say, on the hill, karma comes around twice. You know what I mean? Around Providence, karma comes around twice, and make sure it come by and kick your ass. That article, The Riley Factor, without intending to really shed light onto what the little evil guy is all about and how his unprocessed trauma paved the road for his motives. God also doesn't endorse innocent people being jailed. Yeah, but sometimes, you know, maybe not endorsing it, but, you know, just like how, you know, how Jesus, you know, went to the cross and, you know, he sacrificed himself, and, you know, maybe Eddie is a prophet. Maybe Eddie was here doing the Lord's work. You know, going into the prison, changing the rules, you know, doing more for the prison. You know, they needed somebody like a Eddie O'Brien. We heard stories that Eddie stopped more bad things from happening up there than the administration. You know, salute to Eddie, man. You know, imagine that, stopping more violence than the administration, you know, having visiting rules changed, doing better things for the institution. You know, JoJo told us the last time we spoke with JoJo, I'm going to have to do a whole playlist, JoJo's playlist. JoJo episode 1, JoJo episode 2. Maybe we'll have to bring him on as a regular guest. We got to get him in front of the camera, though, don't we, people? We got to get JoJo in front of the camera. You know, guys like him, they like to be on camera. You know, but just like that, the judge denied the motions. No, you ain't testing jack. No truth. We don't need the truth. We don't do truth over here at the Commonwealth. This is New England. This is New England. We don't do the damn truth. We don't do the truth around here, do we? I mean, and if you read the transcripts, the judge says, I am denying the motion to compel the production of hair and blood samples. And when Eddie's attorney objected, the court moved on like he didn't even say anything. Like they had no respect for that guy. And when, you know, and this is not a small thing. This is not a technicality, I don't think. This is something that his lawyer should be able to argue. I mean, they were suppressing evidence. They were hiding the truth, right? The state was blocking Eddie's attorneys from proving Eddie was innocent. How could he prove he was innocent if they wouldn't allow him to? Because I think if the samples, right, if they would have been tested, I would bet the unidentified blood, right, matched. If the DNA under Janet's fingers, right, had been compared, right, the entire case would collapse. And Riley couldn't allow that. And right there it is, right there. If them samples that Riley already had, he didn't want to test anybody. He only tested Eddie. Think about it. Why? You want to know why? Because if they're identified right now, right? If them identified blood, if you match that shit, right? And if the DNA under Janet's nails, right? If you compare that, the case is over. Boom, bang, throw it out. See you later. And here I am, a jailhouse lawyer. You know what I mean? Learned all my shit in a law library. Self-taught. Maybe I should go sit on the side. I can go co-chair. You know? But Tom Riley knew that shit. But no, he didn't want to test the samples. You know what he did? He buried the samples. And he buried Eddie O'Brien. You know, build a jail around Eddie O'Brien. That's what he did. He buried him. He refused to send him to Selmach. Right? He didn't want to let George test him. What are you hiding? And he refused to let the truth come out. And the judge. What the fuck? Excuse my language. I'm so sorry about that, but the judge just allowed this shit to happen? I mean, what the hell, man? All of a sudden, you say, oh, we got him, and the truth gets handcuffed and carried right out the damn courtroom. Is that some bullshit? I mean, seriously, is that some crazy shit? So how can anybody out there sit there and say that Eddie is how could you say Eddie is guilty? I just don't understand it. You can't be listening to anything that I've been saying. Because everything I've been saying has been pure facts. And I would invite anybody to challenge me on anything I have said. Because I believe everything I've said was basically the truth or close to the truth. I'm close. I don't know everything. You know what I mean? I don't know all the fancy words. You know what I mean? But I try my best to break it down for everybody so you can really understand it. You know, why did he pick the shiny apple? You know, the factory. You know, these metaphors will help people understand it a lot better. You know, and I think during these transfer hearings, like a lot of people said, Eddie's fate, it was a wrap. It was a wrap. Because you can't defend yourself when the evidence that could clear you, they won't allow it. And the people that won't allow it and that hold the key are the people trying to convict you. So where did Eddie have any kind of chance at all? Where? And that poor family, that poor O'Brien family, what they had to deal with of their only son. Horrible, man. How Eddie got screwed. Sad story, man. And it wasn't by a mistake. It wasn't by oversight. It was by an entire system. An entire crooked system that didn't want the truth. They wanted a conviction. You know, they wanted a friggin' conviction. You know, he definitely wanted a conviction. You know, and on the night that this all happened, with Eddie being mugged in Union Square, I mean, that basically provided Tom Riley with his chance. This is his chance to basically squeeze Eddie now. Oh, he was attacked? Really? He frames it as 2 years ago. He's still a no. Look at Riley's notes where he dismissed Paul's info. He frames it as 2 years ago. Did you email it to me? Let me go check the email. I mean, look, before this trial even started, man, you got the transfer hearing, right? Then you get all the news headlines, the pretext investigations. The moment Tom Riley and his goons, used a real mugging to pull off a fake interview. So when this all happened, Eddie O'Brien was actually jumped and mugged near Union Square. This was not made up. It wasn't no exaggeration, not a story, not at all. And according to what it happened. And the real world trauma became the weapon for Tom Riley. Because instead of investigating, right? Instead of this guy investigating the mugging, they used it as to turn it against Eddie O'Brien, right? Like I said yesterday, I mentioned a Trojan. No, a Trojan horse, not a Trojan. A Trojan horse. To get inside his home, to get inside his head, they weaponized it. When Freebird was mentioning the notes, you talk about the notes for a minute. The one Riley wrote in his own handwriting. Somerville Hospital, stabbed, robbed. See if anything connects. Family, this is the smoking gun. So he has stabbed equal Janet. Robbed equal Eddie. These were in his notes. This is what was translated. That was some of the translation. Two separate events, two separate crimes, right? Two realities. But Riley writes, see if anything connects. I mean, that's construction. That's not no investigation. Riley was looking for a way to put the mugging and what happened to Janet together. And not because they were connected at all, or not because he needed a legal reason, I guess, to interrogate Eddie, without breaking constitutional protections. But Riley also writes, spoke with parents, said could come, purpose, follow up, very cooperative. Why isolate the word purpose? That's something that also stuck out, to, my friend that helped me break these down. Let's let these scroll across the top of the timeline for you. There it is. It's right at the bottom, coming across the bottom. Spoke with parents. They said they could come. Follow up, very cooperative. Why isolate the word purpose, Riley? Because the stated purpose was a lie. That's why the police told Eddie's parents, right, that they were there for a follow-up on the mugging. And because the parents wanted justice for their son being attacked, right, they were like, I bet. Very cooperative. Of course they were. They thought the police were helping their kid. But what was the real purpose? Right? The one Riley wrote down, right, was to interrogate Eddie about the homicide. That was the deception. That was the manipulation that went on at the hospital. And let's not talk about the constitutional violations. Fifth Amendment, And I didn't come up with this one. I can't take the credit for this one. You know? Maybe my law partner, Freebird, can. You know, the Fifth Amendment violation. A juvenile cannot waive their right unless waiver is knowing, intelligent, voluntary. Eddie's waiver was none of these things. He thought he was talking about being mugged. That's why he thought he was there. So a juvenile cannot waiver their right unless the waiver is knowing, unless it's intelligent and voluntary. And Eddie's waiver was none of these. How about that? He thought he was talking about what happened at Union Square and nothing else. Now, can we free Eddie, Your Honor? Wouldn't that be something if the judge is watching this and he says, hey, you know what? He's right. Sign that paper. Give me that paper. Call up the prison. That'd be some shit, yo. I'd be proud of myself. I retired today. You had to give me the Nobel Peace Prize. But he thought he was talking about being mugged. You know, and that is basically a Fifth Amendment violation, right? According to what I have, the police created, you know, a false scenario to trick him into talking. But the police can lie, can they not? The police can lie. And how many Eddie O'Briens are sitting up there in the joint? Not only in Gardner, not only in Walpole, not only in Massachusetts, in Rhode Island. You know, speaking of Rhode Island, I got locked up with Derek Hassett back in 96. He got picked up on a body. I think it might have been David Andrews that he killed, if I remember correctly. You know, and Derek was telling me, because we were like next door neighbors and stuff, and he was telling me that they couldn't get him on the body that they originally wanted to get him on, so they put one on him. And I think in a couple years ago, Derek makes parole. I just see him on the news yesterday. Derek Hassett violates parole, you know, busted in a cocaine bust. Like, you're on a life bid parole. You're paroled on a life bid, and you're out there getting involved in cocaine deals, man. I don't know about you, Derek, man. Not too smart. You're doing a life sentence. You're on parole for the last 4 or 5 years. I was like, wow, he's been out that long. I didn't even know he got parole. But imagine that. And we got others that can't get parole. And Derek always, I mean, he must have maybe admitted that he finally did it, but I think even Buddy Cianci testified in his trial. You know, the former mayor, but you know, and when I was going through the notes that Freebird, you know, when she transcribed all this, also comes into the Sixth Amendment violation, the interested adult rule, it's called. Yep, that's how they get permission, because of the mugging. You know, but in Mass, juveniles have to be enhanced right to counsel. Parent must be present, informed, aware of the true nature of the questioning. But Eddie's parents were lied to. They were told the purpose was a mugging. Follow-up, they were never told their son was being interrogated as a homicide suspect. So that means the parents couldn't advise him. The parents couldn't protect him. The parents could not invoke his rights. The interested adult rule was obliterated. And that's where we'll leave today's show at. And we'll definitely be back tomorrow. We're going to have JoJo on at noon. You know, we got the night off, so you never know. You see me back up here. But look, I'm still rocking. You know, look, I've been up all night. Still rocking for Eddie, you know? Who's better than that? All right, we'll be right back, and then we'll get up out of here.
Let me tell you about a kid, only 15 years. Eddie O'Brien, caught in the gears. Political pawns, they played their game. Power and money all in his name. But was tight with will, no simple fate. Climbed the ladder, sealed Eddie's state. Wayne, but a prosecutor with a purpose. In the court of politics, none could touch us. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was the stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Riley and Bud, best friends since youth, built a law firm, they spun the truth. When Riley took the case, he was never alone. Built on foundations, powerfully grown. With the Budwell network, they made a show. Charlie Baker in the mix, he's part of the flow. All linked together, climbing the heights. On Eddie's back, they rose to new sights. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was a stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Kimberly Budd, her name now in lights. Chief Justice of the court in the highest of fights. Calls Riley godfather, mentor, uncle too. Let that sink in deep. Eddie's pain paved through. Judge Heffernan ruled fair, you played your part. But the pressure came down like a storm in the dark. It wasn't about truth, wasn't about rights. It was all about power and their political heights. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was the stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Eddie got used by a system so cruel. A pawn on the chessboard, they played him as a fool. So remember his name, let it echo, let it be free. Eddie till it's backwards. Fight for the right you see. Can we keep it real, Thomas? Let the truth ignite. We don't bend, we don't break. We will stand for the light.
Oh, yeah. What a good show that was today, I gotta say, man. Everybody holding it down. Get the volume a little where I want it. There we go. How's that? How's that? Shout out to everybody out there holding it down. Shout out to everybody that showed up in the chat today. Big shout out to 2 cents worth. Lots of great info in the chat today. Thank you for that. I'm always learning something new. Absolutely, man. I hate to make these so long. I'm going to stop breaking them down now. You know, shout out to Freebird, man. You know, somebody who really helps us out, you know, helps us break down the law. You know, but this is how Riley bypassed the Miranda rights. Shout out to Freebird. You know, absolutely. You know, this is how we got permission to talk with Eddie under the guise of the mugging. You know, absolutely. You know, and let's go with some of the super chats, man. Or Talkers jumped in early with the $5, man. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Mikey. You know, absolutely. And then Freebird with the 20, just getting here. Artie does nothing but lie. Absolutely, man. Thank you, Freebird. You know, Freebird with the $5. Really appreciate that. And 2 cents worth with the 1999 Love Your Show, Mikey Free Eddie up. Come back tomorrow. Probably about 11 o'clock. We'll have JoJo on about. Shout out to Aunt Jerry. The chat is family, always family to Auntie G. Absolutely holding it down for Eddie, man. And Freebird again with a 20 spot. Yeah, AI songs are amazing, Mikey. Very powerful. Thank you. And Courtney with the 1999. Keeping it real and giving us the facts on this case. Absolutely, man. So I appreciate everybody. But as we wrap up today's show, I want to take a breath and sit with what we just went through. We went over chapter 6. Let me get this out of here. I gotta get up on that screen. Put me in. Camera 4, please. Can't even find the big guy. There he is. But yeah, we went over chapter 6 today. When Margo Nash break down the 30-year mystery man, Artie Ortiz. He didn't like he couldn't come in the chat and defend himself, according to whoever that Amber Rose was. But Artie Ortiz, the human contradiction, huh? Boy, the walking timeline, the error machine, the man who somehow managed to be everywhere. Where you at, Artie? Everywhere and nowhere at the same damn time. And then we stepped into chapter 7 because Artie was just a couple pages done. That's all he deserved. The juvenile transfer rule, the moment that this whole system showed its hand. Yo, that was some slippery shit. The moment when it became clear that the fix was in a long time ago. And we saw how a child who pushed into adult court, through deception and assumptions and lies and political ambition, and we saw how the evidence was twisted and how the Constitution is treated like a damn suggestion box, and you still say Eddie is guilty, right? Come on, now, what else do you need to know? Margo Nash is coming with receipts, with courage, with clarity, exposing all the cracks in your story, Riley, that you sold the public for all them years. But here we are now, it's 2026, and I don't think you can do that any longer. This is why we're doing this now, right? This is why we're reading this book together. So everybody, free Eddie. And tomorrow we ain't gonna slow down. Tomorrow we're gonna be back with Margo Nash, politics of murder, more lies exposed, contradictions unpacked. We're gonna get to the truth one way or another. And yes, JoJo will be joining us. And maybe we'll open the phone lines a little so y'all can jump in and sound off. All right, so rest up, chat, drink your water, charge your phones. Because tomorrow, man, we're gonna go even. And love from my family to yours, man. As always, thank you to the O'Brien family for trusting me with Eddie's story. Thank you to Margo Nash for writing the book that blew the doors off this case. And thank you, chat and subs, for showing where your heart and open mind is. Peace from my family to yours. We out. I'll see you tomorrow. Stay safe, stay loud, keep it real and free.
The is strong. It's time to be free. Justice for Eddie, justice for all. We'll rise together. We'll never fall. Exculpatory truths left on the shelf. Margo, Nash, revealing the stealth. Turning pages, the story unfolds. The politics of murder, a truth bold and in every corner. The whispers of doubt, a system that's rigged. Can't we just shout? Behind those bars, he's waited too long. An innocent heart, where does he belong? Oh, Eddie, hold on tight. We're dancing for the truth tonight. Break the chains, let the world see. Your voice is strong, it's time to be free. Justice for Eddie, justice for all. We'll rise together, we'll never fall. Reevaluate, we're raising the stakes. Time to uncover the truth for justice's sake. No more suppression, let the voices ring. Together we rise, it's a hell of a thing. We'll sign the petition, take back the night. Fighting for Eddie, we'll win this fight. Oh, Eddie, hold on tight. We're dancing for the truth tonight. Break the chains, let the world see. Your voice is strong, it's time to be free. Justice for Eddie, justice for all. We'll rise together, we'll never fall. More than half alive in a crowded cage, but hope knows no bounds. It's never too late. Hear the rhythm, feel the beat. Justice is coming, can't accept defeat. No more shadows, let the truth shine bright. Eddie O'Brien, ready for the fight. So let's light the way with our hearts ablaze. Dancing for justice, we're entering a new phase. Sign for Eddie, let the world know. We're standing together, we're ready to go. Oh.